During Lockheed's Media Day, CEO Marillyn Hewson addressed reporters on the state of the company and talked about how they've had to expand their supply chain around their customers.
In nation after nation, elected leaders and policymakers are putting a premium on domestic capacity building, job creation, and economic growth. These changing customer dynamics mean that we at Lockheed Martin must find ways to serve as a catalyst for economic growth and national aspirations.
After her speech, Hewson sat down for an interview with Defense News executive editor Jill Itoro and talked about everything from the cost debate over the F-35 to her relationship with the White House and government as a whole.
Marillyn, thank you so much for sitting down with us today.
It's great to be here.
So I wanted to start off, we heard from the F-35 Program Executive Office, and they had some critiques about the program and brought up quality escapes and defects with the program. Can you talk to me a bit about what's happening to drive those out as much as possible?
Well, you know, on the F-35 program, we've continued to progress. We're now almost through all of the development, of the first development phase, and now in ramping up production and sustainment of the aircraft. And as we look at the fact that we've got almost 280 jets already deployed in 15 different bases, it's maturing rapidly. We are very much focused on driving the cost down and on continuing to improve quality. In fact, in the last 5 years, the direct cost has come down like 75%. And on things like scrap, rework, and repair, the time that we involved on the production line to manage quality issues that happen in inline production, that has improved as well, and we're getting close to being at a level that's in line with other programs at this phase in their process.
Okay, I know the last issue involved kind of the primer protective layer. Has there been any issues since then? Or no?
Well, you know, as you're building a complex aircraft, you periodically will have things that might happen on the production line that you have to fix, but we don't have anything that's very significant that affects the entire fleet or anything of that nature.
You mentioned, of course, driving costs down, and I know you have mentioned before the goal of $80 million per plane by 2020. This was brought up before, but I'd like to get your response. The Air Force has pushed the schedule a little bit. How might that affect the ability to really get those costs down to where you plan to be by that time frame?
Well, clearly, you know, as I mentioned to you on the F-35A, which is the conventional version, and we have 3 versions, so each one, the others are a little bit more expensive because they require a different engine or they require more structure for the Navy variant, et cetera. But generally, we use the F-35A as the way of describing how we're bringing the cost down. So today, our last slide, it was at $94.3 million, and we're driving to get to an $80 million per aircraft by 2020. So I think that's very good drive. It'll be at a cost that's at or below what a 4th generation aircraft would cost, with much more capability. In terms of getting there, it's around the ramp up of the production as well as the cost reductions that we're making in terms of the manufacturing producibility, of getting back with our supply chain and coming up with ways of reducing the manufacturing cost or taking cost out in the materials and things of that nature. So certainly the ramp up of production is very critical to driving to get to that price. We're encouraged by the fact that many of our international customers are supporting with their own funds a block buy, and Lockheed Martin has actually leaned forward and put a large amount of money toward us getting out to our suppliers on a block buy for lots 12 through 14. That again helps drive down the cost because they have that volume and they can invest in their facilities and reduce cost. So to the point is that yes, volume makes a difference in how we get to that unit cost, but we're doing a range of things to continue to drive the cost down, and we're still committed to driving to the $80 million price in collaboration with our customer and with our industry partners.
You and I have spoken before about the relationship with the Trump administration and with President Trump himself. I know that he did away with the manufacturing forum that was put in place that included yourself as well as a lot of other business leaders. Has there been a loss in terms of communication, or no? Do you still feel like there's a good outlet in terms of discussing some of the issues and top priorities with the president as well as the administration at large?
Well, there's a very strong relationship in the ability to talk about the issues that are important to the country. I mean, we were engaged in a large way on tax reform and working through that process, looking at what it would bring in terms of making us more globally competitive around the world. We've been engaged on reducing regulations. We've been engaged on workforce development, which is more than just STEM college careers, but things in internships and apprenticeships and the ways that we can reskill our existing workforce to deal with the technology transformation that's going on and all of the digital acceleration. So that engagement is very strong. I'm involved with trade associations such as the Aerospace Industries Association, as well as a Business Roundtable, Business Council. Those organizations have a good line of communication with the administration and with the president on the things that we can collectively do to focus on job creation and economic growth. So that's viable and growing and an important relationship. It's important in every administration for us that we have a dialogue with the administration and with Congress to work on things that we can partner on economic growth.
Executives are put in an interesting position in terms of that manufacturing council. Some chose to step down because of some comments that were made by President Trump. You opted to stick with it. He ended up dissolving it. But talk to me a bit about that decision. Why did you feel it was important to stay on board?
Well, as you recall, the issue was around the incidents that happened in Charlottesville and some of the dialogue around that versus the manufacturing council. I saw them as two distinct things, and I was very clear with the rationale of why I stayed on the council. We need to have a voice. We need to have a seat at the table and talking through how we, as a large manufacturer, one of the largest manufacturers in the country, how we can improve that environment and increase manufacturing and job creation. So that's one place that I wanted to have a seat at the table and be involved in. The matters of what happened in Charlottesville were separate, and they were. And that is how I talk to my employees about what that was unacceptable and inappropriate, but they are two different things. So that's the reason I stayed on the council.
And now the council's gone, and you mentioned there's alternatives. Do you hope something like that will again reemerge or be created to allow for that official seat at the table for these sorts of things?
Well, we always look for opportunities where we have a voice, and I think those will continue. For example, as I talk about workforce development, we have a good dialogue with leadership in the administration on things that we can do together on workforce development, and I've been engaged with members of the administration on that front. Similarly, as we look at infrastructure and where there's opportunities there, as we want to sell our products internationally, we need the U.S. government advocacy to help us with selling our products and national security and interoperability and national security support with our allies. So I don't feel like we're not having that dialogue. I don't feel like we don't have a voice. And if there are other opportunities like the National Space Council where we can be engaged with our colleagues in working together with the administration, we look forward to those opportunities.
So there was some reports recently, one article in particular that cited that it has been said that you are as powerful as a cabinet level secretary or more. Do you, first of all, what is your response to that perception in terms of your position as CEO of Lockheed Martin?
Well, first of all, if you look at Lockheed Martin, in my view, I have the honor and privilege of leading what is a national asset. I mean, what we do for this country, men and women in uniform, and the things that we do on advanced discovery that helps change people's lives, the things that we do to support innovation and growth and jobs, we're an important element of the economy. So I take that responsibility very seriously. I think it's critically important. I think the dialogue you were referencing is the size of our company. We're a $51 billion company. That's our sales. We're not the largest in the United States. We're among the top Fortune 100, and that's because of what we do, of some of the most important work for not only our citizens, but for citizens of our allies around the world. So, comparing that to a cabinet secretary, I think that's the wrong comparison. I mean, we are a global security company that's in aerospace and defense.
And then finally, to close it out, what is the appropriate relationship between an executive like yourself and the Defense Department? And what is the importance in that role?
Well, I think it's important as a leader for Lockheed Martin. You know, we are, if you look at our sales, it's close to 70% is for the U.S. government. And so it's important that we have a voice not only with the Department of Defense, which is our largest customer, but with our intel agencies, with Homeland Security, with NASA, with Commerce Department and others, that as the leader of the corporation, that I have an opportunity to represent our company, just as I do with leaders around the world when I meet with ministers of defense or heads, chiefs of air forces and things like that. It's important that communication is open and transparent so that we can be a trusted partner to these customers that we have.
Well, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jill.